We'd like to thank each of you for attending today's webinar, Get Your Sales and Marketing Data in Shape for a Successful 2017. Our speaker today is CJ Hapmeyer. CJ is the CEO of KPI Analytics. After our presentation, you'll have an opportunity to submit questions through the GoToWebinar control panel. With that being said, CJ, take it away.
Thanks, Joe. So let me just level set before we get into it. Who should be watching this? And the answer to that is anyone who has a stake in ensuring that your organization's data contributes to revenue, first of all, and also gives you the ability to get smarter about who's buying, who's not, why, and what to do about it. What's this about? This is basically some simple tips to get you moving towards data fitness in the new year. And while we won't have time to get into the how-to on every single element, we will get into enough detail to create some action. And why is this important? If you believe serious decisions, which I do on this point, they say that most organizations double their B2B data every 12 to 18 months, and they're not talking about storage size, they're talking about records. And also, this plays into the 1-10-100 rule. Google it if you haven't heard of it before, but basically, if you don't want to spend $1 to prevent something, think about bad data, you can spend $10 later to fix it, or you can spend $100 over time directly and indirectly to ignore it. And finally, marketing automation platforms and SDRs or salespeople, they have two things in common. They're both big investments for your organization with little patience for bad data. In the marketing automation case, they will shut down your campaigns. And on the other, they'll spend as much time complaining as they do selling. In both cases, you can do better. How long will this take? Probably less than 20 minutes. We'll do some Q&A at the end. If you want to get in the weeds with us, just let us know and we'll geek on this stuff with you. Here's just a few examples of some of the companies we work with, and while we're proud of the logos, the grit and greatness, as it were, comes from working with some extremely smart, savvy, and hardworking sales and marketing people at these companies, and we appreciate them for the opportunity to tell this story. Getting your data into shape for 2017, consolidate, cleanse, analyze, and amplify. Let's get into it. Consolidation. Start where you are. Begin with the end in mind, all that good stuff. Leverage the data you already have, or at least as much as you can get to. You've likely spent a bunch of money on lists and leads over a long period of time, as well as what you've grown organically through your internal efforts. Let's use that. Let's use accounts, contacts, lead opportunities, etc. within your CRM, any transaction or orders you have in a separate system, entitlement systems, all of those. Bring with them the unique identifiers such as Salesforce IDs, order numbers, license keys, etc. And then you need to get those into a data warehouse, merge them, dedupe them, keep all the attributes that are available. Again, we won't be able to get into all the how-tos for a lot of this because what we're doing in this webinar is to share what we're doing with a lot of our clients so you can see if it matches up with what might help you, whether you do it yourself, with us, or with someone else. Cleanse the data. So we use multiple services for email validation. A company called Fresh Address is one of our favorites. These are great for identifying problematic emails, known bad emails, spam traps, honeypots, all that kind of stuff. But that's not the whole story. There's free mail. There's easy ones to identify like Gmail and Yahoo. There's 6,000 others that we've identified that we typically take out of our data sets. There's foreign emails, particularly with Canada. You want to check those out and get those out of your system unless you have expressed permission to email those contacts. The CASA laws in Canada could get you in trouble. So it's not just the problematic, but it's the ones that are foreign countries. It's the free mail. Suppress all those things from your B2B marketing. It just makes things a lot easier down the road. If you need to validate a phone number, for instance, before you start having your callers calling on the numbers, we recommend a product called Strike Iron. The next step is fill in missing and erroneous data. That includes business card information. It, of course, includes firmographic, stuff like industry, revenue, employees, etc. For the sake of segmentation and reporting, have not only the integer for the revenue and the employees, but also ranges. Come up with your standard set. We have our own. We're happy to share those with you. As for industries, our experience says less is more because from a segmentation standpoint and reporting standpoint, analysis standpoint, having too many industries gets a little bit cumbersome. At the same time, you want to create fields to take in both the NAICS and the SIC so you can get granular down the road if you need to. And if you look at like LinkedIn's standard taxonomy for industries, they have about 150 or so. SIC and NAICS, they both have over 1,000. And again, you just want a manageable number for simple segmentation and reporting purposes. At KPI, we have a standard set of 24, and then we go down to even 11 when we want to get extremely general. Now, we also have an example of a client that has 11 flavors of financial services because their messaging requires that level of segmentation. So they go from everything from accounting and tax firms to securities firms to banking, et cetera. They've got 11 just within the financial services space. So it's got to make sense for your business, and in most cases, that means it's custom for every one of our clients. As far as revenue and employee ranges, there's a lot of standards out there. We're happy to share ours as well. Just contact us and we'll send them over to you. Title levels and functions. This is where it gets interesting. You can parse a lot from an existing title. You can get to the level, meaning manager, VP, chief, etc., as well as a function, meaning HR, finance, etc. But this is where it can get dicey because most companies we work with assume they know, or at least they've done some analysis to tell them the kinds of titles that typically match their personas, if you will. But what's interesting is that when you assess the titles on the transactions, which means the person the sales rep actually closed the deal with, we see some pretty interesting stuff in most cases. And a last note on this is I'm a big fan of the Challenger Customer by CEB. It's the same guys that wrote the Challenger Sale. And their premise is that there are an average of 5.4 decision makers involved in any B2B sale. So 3 types of these decision makers are mobilizers. They'll help you get your deal done. 3 types are talkers, which is exactly what they sound like. And then there's a blocker. And we've all had deals where we thought we were going to sell to one title, and in the end, another level, and maybe even another function drove the deal. So just stuff to be aware of as you're doing your account-based marketing and your segmentation and messaging. So I guess the moral of the story here is it's really easy to get hung up on titles or even persona mapping. But in the end, pain drives change no matter who you are, and that decision maker may be at a different level and a different function than you might originally presume, and it's important to speak to the pain regardless of the title or the persona. Social profiles. Now, in the context of this webinar, I'm mainly talking about LinkedIn, although Facebook and others definitely have a play in B2B. There's all kinds of ways to market to those individuals via these other channels, but probably the topic of a different webinar. Adding these social profile links in the context of getting your data in shape is a bigger discussion, and in my opinion, sales/real people need to make these connections on a human-to-human basis, but marketing does need access to those connections for the sake of marketing in their feed, and again, different webinar. Analysis. So we've all heard the famous quote from Mark Twain, although I don't think he originally said it. There are 3 types of lies. Lies, damned lies, and statistics. So what we do is try to stay away from vanity metrics and stay solid with directional metrics that will get you to a decision and an action. And in one case, now that we've done all this work, what do you have in your data set as far as organizations go that match your target profile versus the total addressable market? And you got to work with a firm like a KPI or other companies out there that will tell you, hey, well, here's what the total addressable market looks like when it comes to these types of companies, this size, et cetera. And you want to figure out, do you have 12%, do you have 20%, do you have 80%? Those are the kinds of things you can get to when you do all these steps that we just outlined. Now, another metric, which is not perfect by any means, but it's directionally accurate in most cases, is just do a simple prospect prevalence analysis. So what kind of organizations and what kind of contacts, based on the title assessment we talked about earlier, are prevalent in our data set? And there's a good possibility that more of those would be good for your marketing. If you've brought in win-loss data, so all of your deals that you either won or lost, you can take a look at the organizations and say, we win a lot when it comes to these organizations, we lose a lot when it comes to these organizations. On the wins, you can go down to the title level and the department that we talked about earlier and figure out that these kinds of people at these kinds of organizations buy our stuff. And finally, if you brought in historical behavioral data, opens, clicks, downloads, etc., sales touches over what time period, timing to a quote and then to a close, if that's in the data set, those are easy to analyze and further figure out who should I be going after for the most chance of success. So we're on the last leg of this relay, amplify. Once you've gone through this entire process, There are things you can do to get a beat on prospects who at some point will look at what you have and possibly buy. And our recommendation is source additional data, both market data, organizations, and contacts based on this previous analysis. But the caveat here is only buy what you're going to use in a relatively short amount of time, a month to 3 months. Because these are perishable goods. There's no need to spend money on more than what you can consume in any given period. And so the recommendation is small batches for internal use. An example, direct dial prospect records for your SDRs. They can get expensive, and although there's always a lower cost per unit based on volume, we recommend buying in small batches to accommodate your team with the cycles available for outbound calling in that given period and test and measure before you basically go all in. We would recommend sourcing additional channels, particularly to that white space. So when you get into understanding that you have 20% of the addressable market in your nurture streams, what about that other 80%? KPI happens to have our KPI Benchmarks brand, our KPI Events brand, our content amplification, and our ad channels. But in the end, you just want to make sure you're not buying the same lists and leads from multiple suppliers. KPI has a way to help you do that. But in any case, there's plenty of options out there to go look at to figure out how do I get after these targets that I don't currently have in my set and my inbound marketing strategy is not getting to. And finally, an obvious recommendation is to take your best performing content that's working within your nurture streams. You've got enough empirical evidence that says these are great performing assets. That's videos, that's infographics, that's webinars, that's TCO calculators, all those different things that work along the buyer's journey. Take those and apply those to this white space audience that you do not currently have in your data set. Always a good idea. Find someone who can help you do that, make that happen. So some closing thoughts. It's our experience that most companies need outside help with a lot of what we discussed here today. And a recommendation is to find that quote-unquote agile partner who's flexible, mobile, and can bring everything we discussed today together in a cohesive offering. And you saw how we shamelessly showcased some of our clients in the first slide. We believe we can help most companies with these kinds of challenges, but in the end, you make that call, and hopefully that call is the KPI. Whoever you do partner with, whether it's internally or externally, you need to establish data logistics and rules of engagement as a process. And by that, I mean you don't always need direct integration like APIs and webhooks to feed data and leads into your ecosystem or your marketing stack, at least early on. But you always need a formal data logistics process and schedule and rules of engagement that must be followed. You need to be working with people who understand that. And speaking of rules of engagement, make sure that the SDRs or the sales folks, the people that are going to be working this data or working these leads, understand what they're getting and what to do with it. So are they getting top of the funnel, mid funnel, bottom of the funnel type leads? And do they have a systematic and preferably automated cadence against these leads so that you yourself internally can do your own analysis on how this data is working, how the process is working. If it's a free-form jazz, if you will, for every one of the sales reps once they get a lead, it's hard to track the efficacy of their approach. So that's what I mean by a hashtag by hashtag over X amount of days. Is it a 3-call, 3 email over 60 days for one specific type of lead? Is it a 9 calls, 6 emails over 120 days for a specific kind of lead? Those are the kinds of things we can help you out with, but something we certainly recommend for getting and keeping your data in shape. And then let's get into the weeds a little bit on the quality of the calls that your SDRs or your salespeople are having. They should have a call track developed internally, and you should calibrate often on exactly what's being said, what's being asked, listen to the customer, listen to the sales rep, all those kinds of things. Now we use, for our prospecting calls for our customers, we have a standardized call track and intro, the story, the value prop, the key gives, which are the value statements or the valid business reasons why somebody should continue talking to us, and then the key gets, the questions that qualify the opportunity and then also move the conversation forward. The hook, which is the call to action, go to a demo, go to a proposal, sign a contract, etc., and then close. Recap, next steps, always. On the phone, at the end of the call, and via email immediately afterwards. Don't do this just with your prospectors, but your salespeople as well. And let's go back real quick to social media. If a salesperson has moved a prospect to opportunity status, or it's in the pipeline, and they do not have a social connection, at least via LinkedIn. Facebook is probably too much, I get it, but LinkedIn, if they're not connected via LinkedIn, and they're in opportunity status, they're in the pipeline, they have a value associated, they have a percentile close rate, they have a date close, then it may not be a real deal. So you want to check with your salespeople often and make sure that they have a social connection with the person that they're getting ready to close. That's a true indicator of whether it's a real deal or not. One more point on this is that as soon as an opportunity hits the pipeline, hits opportunity status, the top executive at your company should communicate and connect with the top executive at the same level at the prospective company. Your executive should let the prospective executive know that look forward to working with them. That's another indication of whether or not there's a real deal or not.
So last thought, and getting back into the theme of this message, getting your data into shape for 2017, just like getting in physical shape, we all know that it's a never-ending process. We slip up once in a while, but as long as we have an ongoing strategy and we execute and we make it to the gym more often than not, we can end up better off than what we otherwise would be. So just like working out, there's no one-and-done exercise. You have to incorporate good ongoing behaviors with a mindset of constant improvement when you're talking about data, but you can blend good data practices into your ongoing operation, and you can also get some extra good workouts from time to time to up your game, and if you can find a good workout partner in the process, you'll be all the better. Let's go to questions. Thank you all.
All right, thanks again, CJ. Guys, we're going to pull some questions. So if you give me 1 second, let me access the question panel. So here's our first question. Which data sources do you think are the best? So CJ, if you want to take that.
Sure. So it depends on what you're going after. There's a lot of different list providers out there. You can get the intent data. You can get just straight up contact data. Just off the cuff, ZoomInfo is really good for direct dial numbers. Discover.org is one of the best sources out there for direct line numbers. But the big thing is that none of these providers are all inclusive. So you kind of got to be an aggregator. If you're going to go out and just buy lists, you need to buy from several different vendors and merge them all together to get the best of, if you will. But those are two of the top ones: ZoomInfo, Discover.org, and then we've got another 80 that are part of our platform as well.
Excellent. So next question, what is the best way to append more accounts and contacts to my targets?
Again, so you want to go multiple sources, and the simple answer is you use the domain name. I mean, it's not a perfect science, but when you're using a domain name, it's pretty much a binary match. You're going to miss a few things, but you're not going to get many false positives when you talk about the domain name or the URL, the website address of any given account. You want to go after a company. You want to go get with a company that can take your domain names and append several different contacts that meet your target persona, target titles, etc. And again, pursuant to what we were talking about earlier, make sure that you've got a nice array of different people that you're going to sell to, depending on whether it's an account-based marketing strategy or whether it's just a tactical, give me these titles, I sell to these guys, it's transactional, different approaches for different value props. But you can get your domain names out and append from several different sources, and you should be in good shape.
Okay, next question. How often should I refresh my data?
Optimally, it should be refreshed all the time. So there's some really good companies out there that have figured out that they've got it to natural flow, they're constantly refreshing, etc. But it all depends on if you've got a mucked up marketing automation system where you've got high bounce rates that are threatening to shut you down, you're probably in need of what I call a data transfusion. Or if you've got a good clean data set and you feel like you're doing pretty well, but you're just not able to hit your numbers, you need what I call a data infusion. So that's where you kind of go back to figure out who's your target market, how much of the addressable market do you have in your current nurture stream, find somebody that can help you get the other 50%, 70%, 80%, whatever it is, and infuse your nurture stream constantly. And sales guys have a lot of responsibility for that. Marketing obviously has a responsibility for that. And to try to find a partner that can continually just feed you good, solid top of the funnel leads and continue to build your database over time.
Good. Actually, here's a good question. What is your recommendation for identifying more contacts within your current customers?
I'm going to go back to, I think that's just kind of similar to the one before, more contacts within your existing customer set. So you've got a large install base, you've got ongoing upsell, cross-sell, renewal campaigns going to those guys. Again, take that domain name, find several different sources, as many as you possibly can, pull in additional contacts, and increase your velocity that way. And just make sure you're getting it from a reputable provider that's got no bounce rates or low bounce rates, all that good stuff. Domain name's the key. We live off domains here.
And here's the final question. What email or marketing automation system do you recommend?
It all depends, obviously, but in the end, it doesn't really matter the marketing automation or the CRM. If you have processes and discipline and rigor in your operation, you could actually run your business on pretty much any system that's out there. They're all pretty good. But one recommendation I would make, we have a partner called Ringlead. They're a data quality management solution. They keep dupes from getting in through unique entries of the sales guys, web forms coming in, list uploads. It's a very good deduping technology, data standardization technology, all good. And if you're serious about keeping your data quality in shape on a go-forward basis, on a long-term basis, they're a good solution for that. And they work best with Marketo Salesforce stacks. There's a lot of them out there. They've got 1,000 customers themselves. But in the end, we use all of the above with our business, so I can't really make a recommendation on one. They're all pretty damn good, but you got to know what you're doing, and you got to have a good strategy. That's the main thing. Strategy, discipline, rigor in the operation, and you can use anything you want.
Great. So it looks like that wraps up the questions. I don't see anything else coming in. So again, we want to thank everybody for your time today. If you do have any questions, or if you'd like to discuss some of your data or demand gen projects, you have our contact information. You also are going to get a link with a recording to this webinar, and then we'll most likely be reaching out to you directly, again, just to answer any questions and see if we can help you with your strategies. But with that being said, give you your day back, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.